Greg Andruck here, bringing you another Business Freedom Conversation post. Well, it's deja vu all over again. So both B of A and Wells Fargo have come out with statements and economic reports that they believe the housing market is heading into an 80s style recession. What's an 80s style recession? Higher interest rates for longer. Remember that last bout of high inflation we went through lasted 9 years. And then they're saying they think that those higher rates that last for longer could tip the housing market, maybe even the whole economy, into a recession. And they're talking about the higher rates, the fact that there's higher inflation. Hey, take a look at my post. The government's saying inflation is like 3.7%. I have a hard time believing that because my personal experience is I keep getting double-digit increases from everybody, from my cable TV bill to my car insurance guy up 15%, to the post office has raised rates 13.3%. I think the post office is probably the greatest indicator of what the real inflation rate is, not the one that's been massaged by the government. And then the other problem is the constraint on supply. There's a really big constraint on supply. Not only is it just the problem of everything so expensive, but then you have all these government regulations and red tape and whatnot. Home prices, according to B of A and Wells Fargo, are up 40% since the pandemic. That's a pretty darn big increase. And when you couch that with the fact that mortgage rates have basically tripled, I mean, wasn't very long ago you could get a 3% 30-year or a 2% plus 15-year. So you're looking at a 40% price increase, a tripling in the interest rate. And there was only 1 million existing homes for sale. That's less than a 3-month supply on the market because everybody and their brother is trying to hang on to their 4% or less interest rate. People are just not moving if they don't have to because of the massive increase in their home payment if they buy another home. And then I have one more thing to throw on top of that. We're letting 3 million people a year across the border, and they're not all destitute from El Salvador and Mexico or wherever. Yesterday's Wall Street Journal had an article that I think the number 2 group for last month was from India, because everybody around the world now knows if you want to get to America, just get to Mexico somehow and swim across the Rio Grande, and you're here, baby. And if you get caught, you get a cell phone and a motel voucher and a green card and an EBT card. So it's bringing a lot of people. Well, U.S. home production is roughly 3 million units a year. So this is not a political statement or anything. It's a fact. If you have 3 million more people, you got to put them somewhere. And if your industry only makes 3 million new units a year, Now, I have a video from Yahoo Finance right after this introduction. It's from their head economist for research, and he's going to talk about the difference in the rental market versus the single-family home market, and it's going to affect your business. If you're in any of the literally thousands of businesses that deal with people, what they do with their homes, carpet, paint, furniture, electrical outlet, you name it, it's just such a huge thing. Usually, historically, when the real estate market slows down, the U.S. economy does too. But because of all the stimulus money that was handed out, American consumers are spending that, propping up the economy of the U.S. and pretty much the rest of the world. So take a look at this video from the Goldman Sachs guy. It's the B of A and the Wells Fargo people that are saying, we're having all these problems and it's the 80s housing recession. Deja vu all over again. This is Greg Andruck, Business Freedom Conversation Post. I'll catch you on the next one.
Speaking about this just a few days ago and looking across the backlogs that many of the home builders still have that they're working through and where some of those new orders are continuing to flow in, even if it is decelerating. One of the things that we are continuing to monitor as well is where potentially there needs to be more decline. And I would love to know from your purview where the prices need to decline further for a lot of home buyers and prospective home buyers out there to feel like they can effectively offset where rates may be at right now.
Well, I think prices are unlikely to decline meaningfully precisely because of the supply shortage. I would distinguish a little bit between the single family market and the multifamily market. On the single family side, by most estimates, we have a shortage of many millions of homes because we've made it somewhat difficult to build in many places that people want to live in this country, with zoning restrictions and things like that. The multifamily supply response to high prices, though, over the last couple of years has been much more forceful. And indeed, we've seen a lot of completion of multifamily units, and we have a huge number of multifamily units that are still in the pipeline that builders want to finish up. So we have made more of a supply impact on the rental market, and that has helped to slow growth of rents. But it's just very difficult in a short period of time to have a equally appreciable impact on the single family market. And in fact, we've seen the homeowner vacancy rate fall even a little bit further to now a historic low. So primarily for that reason, you're absolutely right that affordability has diminished substantially. First, prices rose a lot, then mortgage rates rose a lot. It costs an awful lot more to finance owner-occupied housing than it did several years ago. But because of the supply shortage, I think the demand is still there for the market to clear at prices similar to where we are. So we're looking for a small dip in prices in reaction to the big move in rates that we've seen this year, but then a small uptick next year. So no major changes from here.
Yeah, David, we got to hustle to our finish here, but ultimately, when you think about the kind of turnover on a market basis because of the zoning that you were mentioning, are you expecting there to be another wave of perhaps migration into different markets where affordability is that much more attainable for prospective home buyers?
I think that's a reasonable conclusion. For people who don't have homes, that you might see some migration toward cheaper markets when people get to the stage of their life that they want to buy a home. For people who do own a home, who do have a mortgage, in general, they're paying a much lower rate than is available today, so they're sort of locked in. But the people who are renting, who want to transition to buying, given the high level of prices and given the impediments to building more housing in areas where prices are very high, I think it makes a lot of sense that we'll continue to see migration toward lower housing cost areas.
David, where do you see mortgage rates at the end of next year?
Similar levels. We don't have the Fed changing policy until Q4 of next year. And I think the increase in long-term interest rates that we've seen recently, which is of course spilled over to the mortgage market, has probably come from things that are likely to persist. Number one, I think the market has substantially reevaluated what it believed last cycle about the longer-term neutral or equilibrium rate. And number two, possibly there's been some increase in term premia as well. Until the Fed cuts or until something interest rate related seems to go wrong in the economy, I don't see a lot of obvious reason to expect meaningful declines there.